Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shavasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachanam Pangam Langate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Okay, so we'll resume the discussion from 331.29. We had discussed 29 last time, and I just wanted to start with it again for the sake of continuity. So these verses come in the section of Lord Kapila describing the suffering of the jiva after it leaves the womb of the mother. Like earlier on, the suffering within the womb, then after that, the suffering as an infant, and later on, as the child grows, the nature of the suffering changes, but the suffering stays. In fact, it actually becomes more insidious because earlier on the suffering is burning away bad karma. Like when the child is suffering, it's just suffering. And when people suffer, one understands that it is burning away the results of the prior impious activities. Now we see that as the child grows, the suffering is the kind that is also creating bad karma. So it's here that the self-perpetuating nature of the conditioned soul begins to manifest. Okay, verse 29. Sahadehe namanena vardamane namanyuna karoti vigraham kami kameshantaya chatmanaha. With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people. So as I had mentioned, that Lord Kapila was previously talking about suffering that was inflicted on the jiva, either due to circumstances, like being trapped in the womb, or by other people. Now, the jiva is beginning to reciprocate in pride. He is increasing in false prestige and anger and creating enmity towards similarly lusty people. And the result is Antaya Atmana. Antaya Atmana is the destruction of the self. Srila Prabhupada translates it as that he vanquishes his soul, indicating that by such activity, he is taking away his spiritual identity. Vishwanath Chakravarti translates this Antaya Atmana as others trying to destroy his body. That when he creates enmity towards others, then others will reciprocate by giving him pain. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that in the Bhagavad Gita 336, Arjun inquired from Krishna about the cause of lust. And Krishna says that it is said that a living entity is eternal, as such qualitatively one with the Supreme Lord. Then what is the reason he falls prey to the material and commits so many sinful activities? By the influence of the material energy. And Krishna says that it is it is lust only. Kamesha Krodha. That it is lust only that later on becomes anger. Prabhupada says both lust and anger stand on the platform of the mode of passion. Lust is actually the product of the mode of passion. And in the absence of the satisfaction of lust, the same desire transforms into anger on the platform of ignorance. When ignorance covers the soul, it is the source of degradation to the most abominable conditions of hellish life. And then later on, Prabhupada says that to raise oneself from hellish life to the highest position of spiritual understanding is to transform lust into love. This is one of Prabhupada's mantras. Transform lust into love. He would joke that I am making hippies happy. So taking the same emotion, but transforming it by changing the object of it. So Prabhupada quotes Narottam Das Thakur as Kam Krishna Karmarpane. So this is actually a song by Narottam Das Thakur in Prema Bhakti Chandrika, where Prabhupada in the purport, he essentially paraphrases two verses from that song, the verses 9 and 10. When Narottam Das says that I shall fight with lust, anger, bewilderment, greed, madness, envy, and pride. Defeating them, I will become blissful at heart, and I will easily be able to worship Govinda. Kam krodha mohalo mad matsarya ja dambasaha. Stan stanine jukta kariba anandakari hridaya rupikari prajaya anya se Govinda bhajiba. So this is the resolution of the jiva. And then in the next verse, Narottam Das Thakur says how he will do it. Kam Krishna karmapane. Right, so he says that I will engage the fruits of my work to Krishna. Then Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jane. That anger I will direct towards the enemies of the devotees. Lobha Sadhu Sange Hari Katha. Greed I will engage by being greedy to hear the topics of Lord Hari, Sadhu Sangha, in the association of devotees. Moha is the labd bina, that bewilderment will be manifested because I cannot immediately attain my worshipable God. Mad Krishna Gunagane. That bewilderment will be manifested, madness will be there when I will madly glorify the transcendental attributes of the Lord. Nijut karibe jatha tatha. So in this way I will engage each of the services to Lord Krishna. So preaching purport, but very, very sweet and powerful. It's the essence of the Bhakti principle in Gaudiya Sampradaya, Yukta Vairagya, that anything and everything can be used in the service of Krishna. So this Kama, Krodha, Moha, Lobha, Mad, Matsarya, they're considered to be the 6 anchors that hold the jiva into the material world. And that's what Lord Kapila is talking about. And Prabhupada says that these 6 anchors become the 6 balloons that will elevate one to Krishna simply by changing the focus of them. That if instead of being lusty for material things, if one becomes uses the lust to offer service to Krishna, it becomes from an anchor, it becomes a balloon, and so forth. Okay, next verse, 30. Bhute pancha bhira rabde. I'm sorry, different meter. Bhute pancha bhira rabde deha deha bhut sakrat aham mametya sadgraha karoti kummatir matim. By such ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With this misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent thing as his own and increases his ignorance in the darkest region. So this is referring to those who are using their impulses towards material conditioning. And what is that resulting in? In aham mameti. Aham mameti is in I and mind. We actually have a severe thunderstorm warning over here, and I see the lights flickering. So just in case we lose power, we may lose the connectivity. So these coverings of aham mameti we discussed earlier, right? When Maitreya was talking to Vidura earlier on in the 3rd canto, that how the ignorance develops as avidya. From avidya comes asmita. Asmita is false identity, material identity. From that comes rag and dvesh, the attraction to material, and or attraction to what is considered as pleasing, and dvesh is fear of losing what you have, or dvesh is envy of those who have that you possess. Then this avidya, asmita, rag and dvesh, they finally manifest as abhinivesh, because death is the one. Abhinivesh is fear of death, because death is the one that finally takes away everything. So whole life, rag and dvesh, that trying to get what you want, and envious towards those who are impediments, or those who have what you want. So the whole life is rag and dvesh, and then all the time one is thinking that death will ultimately take away everything. That's abhinivesh, and that creates further bewilderment. So all these are the symptoms of the avidya that the jiva actually falls with into the material world. Right? So avidya is the symptom of tamaha, ignorance of one's identity. Asmita is the symptom of moham, accepting one's body as the self. And then rag is the symptom of mahamoham, which is accepting those connected to the body to be self. And dvesh is the symptom of tamishwaram, being resentful of any obstruction to material enjoyment. And abhinivesh is the symptom of andatamishram, which is the great struggle for the existence and the constant fear of death. So that's why Lord Kapila says that it increases his ignorance in the darkest region. Prabhupada explains that the expansion of ignorance is explained in this way. So this is the way that avidya becomes asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh. And Prabhupada says the first ignorance is identifying one's material body. Right? So after one forgets one's identity, tama, then the first ignorance is moham, accepting one's material body of 5 elements. Then the second is accepting someone else as one's own. This is mahamoham. And then Prabhupada doesn't go into the full detail and say, in this way, the ignorance expands. Okay, verse 31. Tadartham kurutve karma yad badhyati samsritam yonyati tadat klesham avidya karma bandhanaha. For the sake of the body, which is a source of constant trouble to him, and which follows him because he is bound by ties of ignorance and fruitive activity, he performs various actions, which causes him to be subjected to repeated birth and death. So we see that the child is now reaching a stage where self-awareness is becoming more and more prominent. This is youth, essentially, where the child is now grown into a youth, and this is actually the turning point. So far, the child was acting according to the impulses and the environment. Now, as a youth, the jiva is making more and more decisions, making choices that will mold his future life. So in this verse, Lord Kapila, he binds the past conditioning. He says, yat badha, avidya, that the person has been bound by ignorance, karma bandhana. And karma bandhana means by previous activities, previous karma. And what does it result in? In samsritam, the future activities. And future activities will be described more in the previous verse. For the practicing devotees, this is the time for them to take to spiritual practices. So we see that in the life of devotee children, right? Till they're small, they're very nicely following Krishna consciousness. Right? They're learning shlokas, going to Sunday school, having shikha, chanting Hare Krishna. When they reach youth, then shikha is gone, and then they have porcupine hair. They start growing hair with different, like vertically growing hair. Kirtan is replaced by pop songs. So why? Because at this stage, the jiva is making its own decisions. So that's why one says that when a child becomes a youth, they have to find Krishna on their own. When the child is a child, then they're simply living in an environment. They don't know better. They're simply living in an environment. They see the parents do something, they imitate. They're told to do something, they do it to please the parents. That's the nature of children. But when they are youth, now they are establishing their own identity. So that's the most important time when they need to find Krishna on their own, just like the parents did. That at some point, they went to the temple, they met the devotees, they ate prasadam, they chanted, and then they found Krishna. So this is something we discussed when discussing how to cultivate second generation devotees. Second generation devotee is just a term that is used for children of devotees. Does not really mean children of Prabhupada disciples, but just children of devotees. In this context, of course, Lord Kapila is not talking about devotees, but he's talking about the journey of a conditioned jiva. That now the jiva is making its own decisions, but because it is conditioned, it will make decisions that will lead it to a life that is subjected to repeated birth and death. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that his foolishness is that by doing sinful actions for the pleasure of his body, he creates further suffering for the body. So what the activities are considered to be pleasurable for the body are suffering in the present and also suffering in the future. Srila Vyasadeva makes similar point when he goes into trance on the instruction of Narad Muni in the 7th chapter, 1st canto, where he says that due to his external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. So one might think that what is the hope? That if the people keep doing more of what they did in the past, then they will continue to spiral down and down. So the hope is that there are devotees who will guide. So Prabhupada in the purport actually says that unfortunately, even that facility is not there. He says, unfortunately, most of the people who are leading are of the same mentality. So they are andayatha, andher, upanyamana. So this is Prahlad Maharaj. So the andayatha, andher, upanmaya means blind man leading other blind men. And Prahlad Maharaj actually in his prayers, he says this, that a blind man guided by another blind man misses the right path and falls into the ditch. Materially attached men led by other materially attached men are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. So Prabhupada points this out to talk about the urgency of preaching. And Prabhupada was always very hopeful that devotees will take positions of leaderships. Like Bhakti Vaibhava Thakur would say, right? That I'm looking forward to a day when the judge will wear a Vaishnav tilak. And Prabhupada would also encourage his disciples and followers to take on leadership positions in the society, not because he wanted them to be materially successful, but because he wanted them to be role models for those who are searching. Okay, let's go to the next verse, 32. Yaddasadvi pati punaha shishnodara kritodmani astito ramate jantus tamo vishati purvavat. Tamo vishati purvavat. If therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people, engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. So, in 12 verses, Lord Kapila, he talks about what is the single most potent influence on the person who is now trying to find his own footing in this world, which is association. So he talks about the effects of bad association in these verses. That in 3 verses, he will talk about bad association with sinful men. And in the following 8 verses, he will talk about what he considers to be the most dangerous kind of association, which is illicit association with the opposite sex. So at the stage of youth, the identification with the body is very strong. So now one cycle is over. The jiva in his previous life did sinful activities, fell into hellish conditions, transmigrated from various lower species, got a human form, entered into the womb, suffered immensely, took birth, suffered as a newborn, suffered as a child. Now that he is a youth, he is now taking charge of his own life. Saw that in the previous 2 verses. Now he is making decisions that will determine his future life. At this point, the most important influence is association. And even though Lord Kapila talks about bad association, but this is also the redeeming factor here. Because if the cycle is self-perpetuating, that material conditioning results in material conditioning, then there is no hope for the jiva. But just like bad association will condemn the person to hell again, good association will help the person escape this cycle. So buried in this condemnation is also hope. Even the Lord Kapila doesn't talk about it explicitly. Srila Prabhupada talks about it, of course. Lord Kapila doesn't talk about it because he is describing the spiral of a conditioned jiva. So he says that if a person takes the path of sin and sensual enjoyment, then purvavat. Purvamat means that just like before, he will again fall into hellish conditions, which means that again he will go to Tamishra and Tamishra. Again he will suffer there. Again he will go through many lifetimes as different species. So the whole thing will happen again. Now, when a devotee reads this, then he can say that, on the other hand, if the jiva takes to devotee association, then Purvavat is now pointing to the state of the jiva before he became conditioned, which means that returning to his original spiritual identity. Okay, let's go to verse 33. Satyam saucham daya maunam buddhi shri hirirya shakshama samodamo bhogas chaiti yat sangadyati sankshayam. He becomes devoid of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, fortune, and all such opportunities. What is all this coming from? Yat sangat. So when a person falls into bad association, then what happens? Yati sankshayam. That all qualities that are favorable to spiritual advancement are lost. The Prabhupada says that those who are addicted to sex life cannot understand the purpose of the absolute truth, nor are they clean in their habits, not to mention showing mercy to others. They cannot remain grave, they have no interest in the ultimate goal of life. Prabhupada is kind of looking a little bit ahead. Lord Kapila does not talk about, he's talking about bad association, Prabhupada is talking about sexual addiction over here. But the reason Prabhupada is talking about it is Lord Kapila will make this point in subsequent verses, that of all the kinds of bad association, this is the most potent and the most insidious form. So he said, because of that, one cannot be clean, one cannot show mercy. So he said, all of this comes from those who are addicted to sexual life. And Prabhupada says that such people have no sense of decency. Even in public streets or public parks, they embrace each other just like cats and dogs and pass it off as in the name of lovemaking. So this is Prabhupada just, I think, sharing his shock and surprise when he came to the US. Because India, for all its degradation, not sure how things are now, but especially definitely in the 60s, this was not done, where people were openly in the streets in sexual encounters. And the 60s and 70s was, of course, the hippie era, where this was going on probably even more. So Prabhupada is commenting on contemporary observation. He says, behavior like that of cats and dogs will keep them in the position of cats and dogs. So we see this also in the Bhagavatam, in the life of Ajamil. He was a Brahman with all the good qualities. He became lusty, and each one of those qualities he lost. So these qualities that are described by Lord Kapila are actually very similar to the qualities described by Krishna. Samadama tapasocham, shantir ajvam evacha, jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahmakarma swabhavajam. This is 1842. So Krishna says that all these qualities are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. So essentially, and we'll see that actually a lot in some in this chapter, but a lot in the next chapter, where we see that Lord Kapila is basically almost paraphrasing what is spoken by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Next chapter is mostly about reincarnation or the cycle of birth and death. So we see that lot of similarity between the two scriptures, which essentially enforces our faith. Okay, verse 34. Deshvasanteshu mudheshu kanditatmasvasadhashu sangam na kurya kachoshyesu. I'm sorry. Sangam na kurya chosheshu yoskrit mrigeshu cha. One should not associate with a coarse fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. Previous verse, Lord Kapila condemned bad association. Because of the bad association, the person continues to be spiraling into the material existence. So Devotee might say that, what is this bad association? Explain it a little bit more. That you have said one should not associate with materially minded people, but explain more. So he gives 5 characteristics of people who are considered to be bad association. Ashanteshu. Ashanteshu are people who are violent. Shant is peaceful. Ashanteshu is opposite of that. Mudheshu, foolish. Khanditat amasva, who are bereft of self-realization. Then asadhushu. Asadhushu who are wicked. Asadhushu also means those who are opposed to sadhus, who are envious of devotees. And Yoshid Krida Mrigeshu, that those who are attached to women. So we see that some of these qualities are more gross. Ashantishu being violent, Mudeshu is being foolish, and some of them are subtle, like Yoshit Krida Mrigeshu, one just has that attachment, and some of them are spiritual, like Khanditat Amaswa. The person has no desire for self-realization. Asadeshu, if it is looked as opposed to sadhu, becomes the absence of a spiritual quality. The devotee's spiritual quality, defining spiritual quality is that sadhu sangha, that is always looking for associating with devotees. Prabhupada says that advancement in Krishna consciousness involves developing the qualities of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, intelligence and spiritual knowledge, simplicity, material, opulence, fame, forgiveness, and control of the mind and senses. Prabhupada quoting Bhagavad Gita's 13.8 to 12 qualities that are mentioned there. Lord Chaitanya has advised that any person who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and who desires to pass beyond material nations must not associate himself with women or with persons interested in material enjoyment. So this is Lord Chaitanya speaking in Madhya Leela 11.8. So Lord Chaitanya is speaking to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, where he says that a person who is seriously desiring to cross the material ocean a person who is seriously desiring to cross the material ocean and engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord without material motives, seeing a materialist engaged in sense gratification or seeing a woman who is similarly interested is more abominable than drinking poison willingly for a person who is seriously interested in devotional advancement. Prabhupada says on the purport, for a person seeking advancement in Krishna consciousness, such association is more dangerous than suicide, spiritual suicide. Okay, verse 35. Na tathasya bhaven moho bandhaschanya prasangataha yoshit sangad yatha pumso yatha tat sangi sangataha. The infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. So, previously Lord Kapila had described 5 categories of bad association: violent people, foolish people, not interested in devotional life, opposed to devotees or wicked, and attached to women. So, which of these 5 is the most insidious? He says that the most insidious is associating with women or with those who are fond of associating with women. So one may ask that associating with women, okay, but why even associating with those who are fond of associating with women? And this is because of the power of association. So it's interesting that associating with those who are fond of associating, it does not even mean that they're actually associating, but they just harbor desires to associate. That is contaminating. And this topic actually 8 verses is spoken where the association with women is strongly condemned in various ways. So to preface that, the point that I would like to make, which Lord Kapila makes towards the end, is that both ways is condemned. That just like women are condemned as being one of the biggest hurdle in a man's spiritual journey, a man is condemned as being the biggest hurdle in a woman's spiritual journey. So essentially what is being condemned is this attraction to the body from an enjoying facility, right? And the reason I'm prefacing it is because these verses may appear to be misogynistic. That one may think that the Bhagavatam is condemning women, which is of course not true. The Bhagavatam is condemning the exploitative nature of the men, and vice versa, and the exploitative nature of women. The gender per se is not being condemned. What one seeks to get out of that gender, that is being condemned. Prabhupada will write he'll explain that in the purports when he talks about the same association between men and women. If it is centered around Krishna, it becomes liberating, right? So obviously, intrinsically there is nothing that is debilitating in either gender, man or woman. What is debilitating is how one perceives it. So, so carrying on the theme, we have the statement of Lord Rishabdev when he teaches his sons, which includes the famous Bharat Maharaj. He says that the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. And on the basis of this misconception, which ties together the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to body, home, property, children, relatives, and wealth. In this way, aham mamiti. In this way, the person thinks in terms of I and mine. So Lord Rishabdev describes it as mitho hridaya grantham, as a two-sided knot. So mitho means mutual. So two-sided knots here is more difficult to untie, because if one unties one part of it, the other part of it will still bind. So just as the association of those who are fond of women is condemned, the association of those who are fond of devotees is the most potent way to make spiritual advancement, right? So the point that is being made here is the power of association. If it is bad, very bad. If it is good, very good. So the Prachetas in their praise to the Lord, they say, Tulayama lavenapi, that even a moment's association with a pure devotee, Bhagavad Sangi Sangasya, that Tulaya lavenapi. Lava is what we did that in the calculation of time. Like lava it's a fraction of a second, an eighth of a second, or something like that. But essentially, a moment is it that even a moment with Bhagavad Sangi Sangasya is incomparable. Na swargam, na punarbhavam. That you cannot compare it to being transferred to the heavens. Swargam, na punarbhavam, which means that you can't compare it to liberation, Brahman liberation. na punarbhavan, no further, taking no further birth. For the living entities, martyam came utasthita. So these are the living entities who are martyam, who are destined to give up the body. Association with the pure devotees is the highest benediction, right? So this is the reason that Lord Kapila is at one point condemning, but also he is demonstrating to us the potency of it. That we have a potion that is a very powerful poison, but if it is taken nicely, it becomes the most powerful nectar. So he's exposing us to the potency of association. Okay, I'll do one more verse and then pause after that. I'm hoping to finish this chapter. Let's see if we can succeed. Verse 36. Prajapati swam duhetram drishvatadrupadarshitah rohed bhutam sonvatvad raksharupi hatatrapa. At the sign of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. So Lord Kapila is now giving an example that how powerful is the association of a woman. It can bewilder even great souls who have enormous intelligence and discrimination. And who he does give the example of Brahma, the Prajapati, the original Prajapati himself. So we know this is the incident of Vak, that he became so infatuated with Vak that he began to follow him, and his daughter took the form of a deer and he took the form of a male deer. So Prabhupada said that great demigods like Brahma and Shiva, so what to speak of ordinary souls, are captivated by the beauty of woman. Therefore, everyone is advised that one should not freely mix, even with one's daughter, mother, or sister. So the reason this is condemned is it's not because. So sometimes people say that how can you say something like this? How can one ever develop sexual attraction to one's daughter and one's mother? Of course, this is Kali Yuga, so nothing is impossible. But at least the scriptures condemn it, not because a person will get attracted to one's mother or sister or daughter, but because that association will result in them looking for the same kind of pleasure elsewhere. Like in English language, there is this saying, right, that which says that men marry their mothers. Right? What does it mean? That when men look to marry, they look for the qualities of their mother in another woman, and conversely, they say women marry their fathers because same reason, they look for the qualities, not that they're actually marrying them. So when one is excessively associating with one's sister, then one becomes favorably inclined towards that kind of association. So then they will look out at other places. They will look for somebody else who they think is as beautiful as their sister is, or as attractive qualities. So those emotions become stirred. The emotions get stirred and they become prominent. So that's why one of Prabhupada's disciples actually shares this, that he was in Mayapur in a room, and Pishima, his sister, was cooking for him, and she came and sat down and was serving him, and they were eating. And then the disciple, felt that they need their privacy. So he gave obeisances and started to go away. And Prabhupada angrily actually told him, sit over here, don't move. And Prabhupada was in his 70s. Both Prabhupada and his sister were in 70s, but same point was being demonstrated, that nature of the senses are such. Another point that is made from, one can derive from this verse, is that Lord Kapila is not saying this to condemn Brahma. So this is the logic of demonstrating a principle by giving an extreme example. So in a way, it is a glorification of Brahma, right? So sometimes, we say that this exam is very, very difficult. How difficult? That even this person XYZ, he failed. Right. So this is not to condemn XYZ, but he is used as an yardstick to show that XYZ is the most brilliant person. The Ramu is the most brilliant person in the class, even he failed. So Brahma is glorified as being complete control, discrimination, but the association with women is so strong that even he failed. But again, the fact is that maybe Prem Kishore Prabhu lost power. But again, the fact is that what did Brahma do after this incident? He prayed he gave up that body, which means he gave up that mentality, and then continued with his service. We see Lord Shiva chasing after Mohini Murti, and what did he do after that? He glorified Mohini Murti, or Lord Vishnu, saying that only my Lord has this power to bewilder me. How great is my Lord? That thank you for showing to the world that you are my Lord and I am your servant. So these great personalities, they don't fall. Even if they fall, it's a temporary fall down. So the important thing is they should not be judged. Judging is dangerous, right? We know what happened to the 6 sons of Marichi, that they started laughing at Brahma chasing Vak. Because of that, they became demons, right? They became demons they suffered for 3 lifetimes, actually, because of that. We see in the case of Advaita Acharya, right? When Advaita Acharya was doing this pastime of preaching impersonalism, just to attract mercy of Lord Chaitanya, they started judging him. And because of that, they lost their bhakti and they became impersonalists. So not for us to judge, but for us to understand the lesson that is being told over here. Okay, let me pause over here and see if there is any comments.
Just a reflection. When somebody asks and take we say that we go through the 8,400,000 species of life. Let's say they go through all these species of life and then they take a human birth again. That means when they go into these species of life, they are in a way purging the karma. But still, when they take birth as a person, as a human being, they still have lots of karma because they still have their own identity, all type of thing that they go through. But in a way, I was thinking like a lot of karma should have been purged when we go through the animal form of life.
You're right. So when they go So one can understand it in this way, that they burn enough karma that allows them to take a human form of life. Right. So assuming that they're at minus 1000, and to get a human form of life, you need to be at minus 500. So they burn when they are in the health and they are suffering, then they're burning off their karma. When they're transmigrating through the species, they're burning karma. Actually, 8.4 million is conventionally used. Out of that 8.4 million, 200,000 are actually humans. So, and out of the 200,000, they are the devas and gandharvas, the different higher species also. So it's not that one transmigrates to the higher species and then comes down to human, but 8.4 is conventionally used to show that they transmigrate through all these species. But the point you're making is valid, that they continue to burn off the bad karma until they have burned it off sufficiently to get a human form of life. So yes, then they carry whatever is remaining, and based on that, they get a certain kind of birth in a certain family with a certain body, and they resume their journey from there. And in this form of life, now they start accruing new karma, which will then determine what happens after that.
Then the other aspect is those who fall down from the heavenly planet, they come as a human being after they enjoy all the piety.
Right. That's why we have so much variety in the humans, right? We have some humans who are born in opulent family, very strongly in the mode of goodness. Some who are very strongly in passion and ignorance. All this variety is there because there are some who are ascending, there are some who are descending, and I forget where I read, but it is said that amongst the ascending, then 3 forms ascended to human form: the cow, the monkey, and the lion. And they ascend into forms of humans, cows with prominently mode of goodness, monkeys mode of passion, the lions mode of ignorance. The devas fall, and they fall in mostly the mode of goodness there. So the human form of life is the melting pot of karma. There's all different kinds of karma, and then you get the opportunity to use this karma that you're born with and create a whole new set of karma for you. That's why it's a very potent form of life, that you're no longer simply on the rails of previous karma. You're creating new. You're creating a new future for yourself.
Thank you, Guru.
Hi, Krishna. I just wanted to clarify the 400,000 species of human beings that is discussed. Does that mean 400,000 species on this planet here, or throughout the universe?
Throughout, it's 200,000, not 400,000. And the understanding is like throughout the universe, like Pitras, Gandharvas, Devas, Sadhyas, all those human-like forms.
Did you say 200,000? I'm just like, I always thought was 8 million for 400,000 species of humans. I'm just please clarify that.
As far as I remember, it's 200,000, but I may be mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah. If somebody can verify, that'd be good.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. you have been mentioning about how child in the beginning is not making their own choice, but they just simply in the environment of wherever they grow, and then as they grow up, even in the devotee family, when they grow up, they make their own choices. So my question is like more of a parenting question actually. Once the child become a teenager or even above as an adult now, and making a choice which may not be favorable to Krishna consciousness, what could the parent do in that situation? Nothing or something? Is there any tips that you can give or any advice?
So this is essentially the key to parenting, understanding that the child will make a choice to take to Krishna consciousness. So as parents, I'm talking from personal experience. My wife was a Sunday school teacher for almost 17 years. So as parents, we think that we will give our children Krishna consciousness. And when they're children, then we get carried away with it. We think, yes, we are giving our children Krishna consciousness. We are they're learning Brahma Samhita and reciting, it's so nice. I remember my son, he was maybe 3 years old, and he could recite the whole Sharira Vidyajal. I mean, he would slur the words, but he had memorized the whole verse, the whole prayer simply by listening to us. He would do it in the temple. They used to call him Prasadam boy. Now he does not remember it. Now he's 26 years old. He doesn't remember it. So understanding that we cannot give them, they will make a choice. That makes our parenting style different. So our parenting style is that when the child is ready to make a choice, how do we influence the choice that he will make? Right. So we create a condition that is suitable for the child to take to Krishna consciousness. So understanding that we can never give the child Krishna consciousness. I remember discussing about my son with one of the senior devotees in this area, and she said that even Krishna cannot give you Krishna consciousness. So if you are thinking that you can give your son Krishna consciousness, you're thinking that you're greater than Krishna. So believe me, Krishna wants to give you Krishna. She was pointing at me. So believe me, Krishna wants to give you Krishna consciousness, but he's failing. That's why you're over here in a material body. And now you're thinking that you can give your son Krishna consciousness, not going to happen. So what can you do? You can create an environment that is favorable for the child to take Krishna consciousness. Okay, so that's the principle. The details are how, and it's a whole seminar, set of seminar in itself, that you lead by example. Create an environment that the child, how do you influence anybody to take to something, right? That they basically see that you are enjoying it, that you are following it scrupulously. They admire the principles for which you stand. I mean, why does the son of a doctor become a doctor? Because he sees that my father is a doctor. People come to him for advice, and he's helping others. He's saving lives, and then they develop that attraction. It's not that there's any genes for doctorate that goes from the father to the son, but the son gets inspired, and that's why he takes to that profession. So that's what we can do. That we can create an environment for the child to be inspired to take to it. And since the child really spends most of the time with us, starts from the home. Starts with us, starts from the home. And then, of course, we curate the other aspects of the environment. So that, the child needs friends, try and get devotee friends. The child needs entertainment, get some sattvic entertainment. Don't deprive the child of entertainment. Right? The child needs to have fun. Then the child gets some fun, which is somehow linked to spirituality. So as I mentioned, it's a big topic, but Lord Kapila is giving us the underlying principle. Prabhupada is giving it to us through Lord Kapila's teachings so that we can adopt it in our own grahastha life.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay, so no more questions. Let's move on to verse 37. Tat srastashteshu konvakandita dihi puma rishim narayanam rate yoshin mahe yamayaya. Among all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayan is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of woman. So Prabhupada, to the translation, is actually pointing towards, or Lord Kapila is pointing towards an incident in which Narayan Rishi was Indra attempted to bewilder him by sending many apsaras, beautiful apsaras. This is Indra's favorite trick. When he sees somebody doing austerities, he sends apsaras. And Narayan Rishi actually became very compassionate towards Indra. That poor guy, he's so agitated. He has the small throne, and he's so scared that. So this is the vision of the Lord. The Lord has billions of Indra at his lotus feet. So he looks upon Indra and he sees that the poor child, he's so scared that we might take his throne away. So out of compassion, they created Urvashi and says, take, you are giving me apsaras. Urvashi is supposed to be the most beautiful. Urvashi means Urva, see, that one who appeared from the thigh of Lord Narayan. So Lord Kapila is talking about the fact that everyone is subject to the attraction of attraction of Maya in the form of woman. And Vishwanath Chakravarti says that Lord Kapila continues to talk about men because he clarified earlier on, very early in the chapter, in verse 6, right? He said, Sutiva, that by the fetus moves to the right side of the abdomen, indicating it's a boy. So this particular jiva that is being described is a boy. So that's why he's describing everything from the perspective of a boy. But same thing is true for a woman also. Vishwanath Chakravarti, he translates this verse a little differently. So Srila Prabhupada says that among all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, only sage Narayan is immune. Vishwanath Chakravarti says that amongst the sons of Brahma, the sons and descendants of those sons, amongst those who do not worship Narayan, which of them does not have their intelligence destroyed by Maya in the form of woman? So the point that he makes is that only those who worship Narayan are immune to the attraction of woman. And Prabhupada actually, in his purport, he expands on this translation. He says that Brahma is the first living creature, then Marichi, then Kashyap, and then the Manus and different human beings. But all of them are bound by the spell of Maya in the form of woman. that from the beginning Brahma to the small insignificant creature like ant. This is Indragopa. Everyone is attracted by sex life. Lord Brahma was attracted by his daughter. Therefore, woman is the wonderful creation of Maya to keep the conditioned soul in shackles. Okay, let's go to the next verse, 38. Balam me pashmayaha stri maya jayenu desham ya karoti padakrantan Bhruvi jambe na kevalam. Just try to understand the mighty strength of a Maya in the shape of woman, who by the mere movement of her eyebrows can keep the greatest conquerors of the world under her grip. So Lord Kapila is saying, just see the strength of my Maya, that powerful kings can conquer all directions. But just by the movement of the eyebrows of a woman, they are brought under control. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he has a very humorous purport. I think Vaishnavacharyas, humor is an important part of intelligence. So they are, of course, spiritually very elevated, intellectually advanced, but a great sense of humor. So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that an all-conquering king enters into the inner chambers and is greeted by the wife as follows. What does she say? Giving me up, you go to conquer and enjoy with other women. What a rascal you are. Hinting this with the movement of the brows, the woman kicks the king, who bows down before her into submission. And then he says, Kevalam means this is a certainty. He's saying that it's not that some queen will say it to some king, or it's not that only queens will say it to kings. He's saying that Kevalam, that certainly this happens everywhere. Kevalam also means that one does not have to search out the reasons for the queen's action. It's their nature. Prabhupada in the purport, he actually, very, very interesting purport, where he shows that how can this how can this principle, or how is this principle applied to Vaishnav worship, especially Gaudiya Vaishnav worship. So let's follow through the purport. So I'm summarizing the points. I won't read it. The first point that he makes is the Lord is the supreme male, Adi Purusha, right? He has the original propensity of being attracted to a woman. That's how we get it. Okay. Now, since the Lord is completely spiritual, he has only attraction to a woman who is completely spiritual, Swajati, right? So this is also reflected in the material world. So what Prabhupada says is that so far, what I'm telling you is Shabda. So I'm telling you based on what we read in the scriptures. But now I will present Pratyaksh to you. That empirically what you can see is that when a conditioned person begins to advance spiritually, then they begin to develop distaste for the material form of a woman. Like Narayan Rishi, like Haridas Thakur, they were Purushas, they are men, But why were they developing that distaste to material form of the woman? Because spiritually advanced. Now, the spiritual form of the woman that the Lord is attracted to goes by the name Srimati Radharani. Therefore, when the jiva is becoming more spiritualized, he will also acquire the nature of Krishna, which implies that he will also become attracted to the spiritual form of Radharani. Which means, flipping it around, that by being attracted to the spiritual form of Radharani, one will make spiritual advancements. This is why we worship Srimati Radharani. Actually, we worship the relationship between Srimati Radharani and Krishna. So it's not that we worship Radharani alone. We worship the relationship between the two. So Srila Prabhupada in this purport, he almost does it like a mathematical theorem. Like somebody will ask you, why do you worship Radharani? Then you can actually go through this. Thank you. No, sorry. Excuse me. So we can actually go through these steps of logic and prove that by worshipping Srimati Radharani, we make spiritual advancement. Okay. So this is a very potent purport, and I would request all of you to spend some time reading it. Okay. Verse 39. Sangam na kurya paramda suchatu yogasya param paramadurukshu matsevaya pratilabdha atmalabo vadantiya nirya dwaram asya. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering service unto me should never associate with an attractive woman. For such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. So, reading this, a person might think that all this is essentially for the materialists. But I am a transcendentalist. I am a jnani, or I am a yogi, or I am a bhakta. So Lord Kapila says that no one, neither a jnani, nor a yogi, nor a bhakta, should fall into this gateway of hell, which is being attracted to a woman. So Lord Kapila also makes this point very similar to the mood of his giving the example of Brahma. Like he gave Brahma as, even Brahma gets attracted can be susceptible to this. So similar, he's saying that in an opposite way, he's saying that that association of women is so insidious that even my devotees can fall prey to it and suffer. So that is why I'm warning them also. It is so potent that even the jnanis and the yogis and the bhaktas, they can get bewildered. So when they can get bewildered, one may ask that what about ordinary men? So Vishwanath Chakravarti says that this can be looked upon in another way also. That a person reads this verse and says that, okay, Lord Kapila, you are saying that transcendentalists should avoid the association of a woman. I'm not a transcendentalist. So he says the logic is na shayan patatyadha. So na shayan patatyadha means na shayan. Shayan means a person who is lying down. Patatyadha means cannot fall further. Right? So the materialist is saying that I'm already fallen. So I can't fall any further. So it should be okay for me to associate with women. The devotees, they're elevated, they have this potential of falling, but I'm already fallen. Right. So Lord Kapila is saying that asya, that even for the most fallen person, this association can cause them to fall even more. So the verse is cautioning from both ends. At one hand, it is saying that even the most exalted person is susceptible to this. At the other hand, it is saying that even the most fallen person should be careful because it can cause them to fall even more. So when you combine the two meanings of the words, what do you get? That whether you are fallen or whether you're advanced or whether you're anyway in between does not matter. Never associate with attractive women. Never associate with women. So essentially the verse is spoken to demonstrate the power of association with women. At one point, a person might think that I'm taking to bhakti or astang, so I'm protected by my advancement. But no, it can still fall, cause them to fall. At other point, a person might say that I'm already fallen, so cannot affect me anymore. No, it can make you still more fallen. To emphasize on the importance of this is essentially a summation. Emphasize the importance of this, Lord Kapila says, Vadantiya. He says that not only am I saying this, Vadantiya, it's also spoken by wise men. Now, why does the Lord need to quote other people? Right? Because he's pleading. He's saying that for some reason, if you don't believe me, believe these other persons. Right? Believe like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, right? He will sometimes quote sages. So Lord Kapila is saying that if you don't believe me, know that those who are like you but exalted, they have made the same statement. So essentially, this is a point of emphasis. So again, one should understand these verses are not meant to condemn women, but it is to condemn the exploitative mentality of women, of men. Right? Because it is, so if we were to look at it from in a more contemporary perspective, that probably this is more true in India, that if a woman dresses up nicely and goes out, then does that mean that the man has the right to exploit her? No. The woman is dressing up for her own pleasure. The fact that the man thinks that he has the right to exploit her means that he has a mentality that is warped. So this is what is being condemned by Lord Kapila. The point is made in the Bhagavatam, in the second canto, where this is 2.10.32, where it talks about how the modes of material nature affect the sense organs. The modes are produced by false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of happiness and distress. And the mind is controlled by the intelligence. So it's basically taking all this chain into the realm of the accountability of the jiva. So you see in this verse that the object of the senses is not condemned. The fact that the senses are attracted to the object, that is condemned. Because the senses get attracted to the object, the senses are controlled, connected to the mind to the intelligence to the false ego, and that is the chain that is being condemned. Okay, I'll do one more verse. I don't think I'll be able to finish the chapter. We have seven more verses, I think. But I'll do one more verse and pause after that. Yapyati shanirmaya yashiddeva vinirmita tam ikshetatmano mrityum trnakupamivavratam. The woman created by the Lord is the representation of Maya. And one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must certainly know that this is the way of death. Just like a blind well covered with grass. So Lord Kapila uses the analogy of a well covered with grass, blind well. Blind well means that not able to come out of it. So the analogy is powerful, because if the well is not covered with grass, then a person will avoid it. He says, okay, there's that well, don't walk over it. But if it is covered with grass, then the person will step onto it without knowing there is a well and fall into it. So then what does that mean? What's the lesson over here? That a person, so if you're asked to walk on a piece of land, and you're told ahead of time that on this land there are several blind wells covered with grass. So what will you do? Every step that you will take very carefully. Right? You won't walk with abandon. You will put your foot, press it down, see that this is firm ground, take another foot, and in this way you will walk. So Lord Kapila is saying that after understanding all that I have told you, this is how you should lead your life. That navigate through your life being very, very careful of this potential downfall in terms of he says, my representation of my Maya. And the one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must know this is the way to death. So one goes through life being very, very circumspect. So the other recommendations are followed. Like Prabhupada or scripture says, don't even associate with your mother, sister, or daughter in an intimate setting. Right? Try and stay away from associating with those who aspire to associate with women. So all this is equivalent to carefully navigating the field that is full of blind wells that are covered with grass. Lord Kapila makes another important point here, that by accepting services. So Prabhupada comments on it, that wells by nature are I'm expanding on the purport. So wells by nature are passive. right? So if you avoid it, you avoid it. But association with women is more dangerous. Why? Because when a woman sees that a man is not interested in her, then she disguises her affection to her in the form of service. Right? So we see that in the pastime of Lord Shiva and Parvati. Lord Shiva, after Sati gave up her body, Lord Shiva was performing severe austerities. Parvati Devi was the son of Himavan and Menaka, and she was, of course, Purvaras. She knew that Lord Shiva is her husband, but Lord Shiva was in performing very, very difficult austerities. So what does Parvati do? She simply goes and serves him. She gets flowers for his worship. She cleans the Yajnasthan. And Lord Shiva is, even though he does not even look at Parvati Devi, but he's accepting her service. And of course, we can't say that Lord Shiva gets trapped because different personalities, different stature of personalities. But the point is that by accepting that service, Lord Shiva, he finally gives up his austerity and accepts Parvati Devi as his wife. We see that also in the pastime of Vishwamitra. That when Menaka is sent, Menaka is very, very scared. The Vishwamitra, he curses at the drop of a hat. That if I go there and I start alluring him with my feminine charms, he'll curse me and I'm gone. But she's intelligent. So she does not do any of that. She goes and simply starts serving him. And then Vishwamitra, he becomes attracted to her, affectionate, attracted, and then he gives up his practices and accepts her. For 100 years, he accepts her as his wife. So Prabhupada makes this point, expands on the point of Lord Kapila by accepting the service, saying that just avoiding is not enough. That this is not just a passive well. It's something that can actually reach out and grab you, disguised as something else. So you have to be more vigilant. Accepting service is something that will eventually lead you to becoming, Prabhupada says, by accepting a service, a man is entrapped. And if he is not intelligent enough to know that she is the gateway to a hellish life, he may indulge in her association very liberally. This is restricted for those who aspire to ascend to the transcendental platform. Okay. So I'll pause here. I'm a little bit over time. Sorry about that. I'll pause here and see if there's any discussion. Okay. If not, then we'll end over here. Vanchakalpatarubhayaschet kripa sindhu vyayavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare